Welcome back to Spartan Up the podcast. This week, we're interviewing Chris Ashenden, who is founder of Athletic Greens, which are delicious. I know a lot of us struggle with happiness, and this guy is going to tell us how he found happiness. And you know what? We all have something to learn from that, and that's what we do here on the podcast. We got our inevitable...
Good word. Yeah.
All right.
Ever.
Dr. Johnny Waite. We have our special guest, Matt Davis, Obstacle Racing Media.
Boom.
I'm Sefra Alexandra, Seedhuntress, and we have Charlie Brenneman, the Spaniard, with our producer, Marion, and of course, always Andrew, who makes all of these things sound great. So, so we're here on Tuesday, Johnny. And
yeah, we're here every Tuesday. It's great. You know what? Hundreds of thousands of people watch us literally every Tuesday, and it's because we bring great content. We've got some new stuff for you. Wednesday, Dr. Lara, we call her Dr. L. She brings you tips to keep your mind right. She's an official Spartan mind doctor. Third Wednesdays, Zach Evanish. This guy's powerful. Thursdays, Zach brings just instantly actionable things. And we've got another great one, Kevin Galati. And for those of you who follow Spartan Race, he interviews our elite athletes. They talk about training, nutrition, recovery. All the tips are going to make you a better athlete.
Sundays, Mark Zuckerberg, I hear?
Quite possibly.
Giselle.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Chomps.
Pro Protein Anti-Junk. Use the code SPARTAN at chomps.com to save 20%.
All right, we are in Tahoe, Lake Tahoe, and we're with Chris Ashenden from Athletic Greens.
Correct.
Talking about life, success, and green juice. You're going to love this. I don't know if you know this or not, but we have 4 children. You have any kids?
Not yet.
Okay, I have 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls, and probably when my oldest, who's now 12, was 4 or 5, I started giving them green juice every day. And the green juice was just ground up like broccoli and this and that, because my feeling was I'm not going to be able to control what they eat during the day, so at least if they get that. So I was super pumped when Athletic Greens came onto the scene, and I learned about it.
Yeah,
it was a lot more work prior to you.
Prior to you to ground it up yourselves? Yeah, well, mate, we're excited to be part of everything you got going on with Spartan. We think it's cool. And
how'd you come up with the idea?
I got sick and ended up on this crazy... I wasn't absorbing nutrients properly, so it's all...
Living in New Zealand, you get sick.
Living in Australia at the time, playing rugby in Australia,
got it.
I got sick and just realised after a lot of back and forth with doctors everywhere, and ended up on a $100 a day customised my blood biochemistry sort of supplement regime, which was just this pile of pills. My body wasn't absorbing nutrients particularly well. And it's not so much what you eat, you learn very quickly, it's kind of what gets absorbed that ultimately will make the difference. So ended up looking for a better way, and part of that sort of journey to solve that problem had smart people help me.
And that was about a decade ago?
2009.
Okay.
We ended up kicking things off.
Nice.
So many iterations have been tried. Now we're up to about the 51st iteration of the little green powder.
And the little green powder is ground up and made in New Zealand?
It's made in New Zealand from both locally and foreign sourced ingredients. Over the year, we're more worried about quality than we are about country of low sort of origin.
Sure. How'd you come up with the ingredients?
I did not. I paid 2 very smart naturopaths, a high-end functional medicine doctor, and a medical researcher to argue amongst themselves on what would be the best. Yeah, there were a few things that were kind of working well, and I got them to help me put it all together, and it worked for me, and ended up working for a few.
So you were able to give up all your supplements?
Yeah, I just jammed everything. Food source, natural, high potency, one place. One and done, man. I just wanted it.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's how it kind of worked.
Had you been in business before?
I had been in business a number of times. My original passion is health and fitness. That's what I studied at university before dropping out to start my first business, which failed. Then odd jobs.
What was that first business?
Supplement company. Okay. Dynamic Nutrition. Lasted all of about 6 months, I think. Then I
ran out of money?
I broke. I ended up about $12,000 in debt, which at the time for a 20-year-old guy was
a lot.
Was ludicrous amount of money. Made me feel sorry for myself for a few years before I got back into the ring.
Yeah, it is. I would imagine first business failure, tough one to pick yourself back up because now you owe money. right?
Yeah, it just seemed like a mountain to climb. Mainly I lost the confidence, I think. So when I did start again, it wasn't in health and fitness. It was actually in buying, doing up and selling houses because I could see the path. So the clarity of path sort of surmounted the confidence.
When was that? Was it mid-2000s?
Like 2003.
Okay. In New Zealand?
In New Zealand, 2003 to 5, basically, I was a property guy.
Okay. And you had fun? You did the construction?
Didn't you do something as well?
I did a lot of construction work, yeah. I love construction. How many houses, like how long did that go for?
Total property deals, about 300.
Wow. All right.
Did a mini retirement. Actually met a guy called Tim Ferriss while on my mini retirement in Buenos Aires and struck up a friendship with him, actually, which was before I'd sort of written a book or anything. So that was cool, man. And then...
Just randomly, you met Tim?
Randomly met Tim. I was in a cafe in Buenos Aires doing Spanish. I decided I want to learn Spanish for 6 months. And it was go to Costa Rica or surf or go to Argentina and play rugby. And so I said, I'll play rugby. So I went to Argentina, I was sitting in this cafe having an English lesson, and this obvious gringo walks in, opens his laptop covered with Megadeth stickers or whatever the hell he listens to, and he starts jamming away. So when my teacher went to the bathroom, I just got up, walked over and said, "Hey man, I'm Chris from New Zealand. What's your name?" And we struck up a friendship that has lasted now a long time.
Quite some time, yeah.
So he was actually pretty brutal. When I sent him the early editions of Athletic Greens, he was like, "What's in here?" And really kind of got after me.
Beat you up a bit.
Yeah, no, just to make sure, like in terms of the quality of ingredients. I didn't really get where he was going with it, but a year later, just as we were about to really launch, I said to him, "Dude, I've realized I've named this wrong. It's not just for athletic people, and it's not just a greens formula. Like, we're so much more than that. I want to change the name, and you're pretty good at this stuff. What do you recommend I do?" And he goes, "Leave the name the way it is." I put it in the 4-hour body, and it's gone to print. And that was the first I'd heard about it.
Oh, nice.
So for good or bad, we left the name that way.
Nice.
And here we are.
So Argentina. I mean,
Dude,
really helped, but it helped the whole business. I mean, had you not met Tim, it would have been a tougher grind, no?
A tougher grind. Well, I was lucky when I over-engineered this product. I didn't really think things through, right? It was that passion project, everything in there, the best of everything. When I finally landed, I got a money partner to help me. He did an amazing job of supporting me. Got the product to the US, very confident, hadn't figured out selling strategy, anything else. Love people, love talking to people, figured if I can sell to you here, I can sell online. How hard could it be? Sure. It was really, really hard.
Really hard.
Yeah. So.
And has it started to work?
The business?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. We're
in a big way?
We're a strong business.
Oh, good. And expanding beyond the green powder?
No, that's our core focus, and there will be some iterations coming up on the product, but we've instead just reinvested typically in making the product better and better and better and better and better. So if you're familiar with the theory of Moat in business, it was making that moat better and better and better. So.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in moat. I talk about it all the time to our company, because if you could build a moat around the brand, like the Tokyo Marathon. It's hard to have 2 marathons in Tokyo, right? Or the New York Marathon, or even Ironman. Hawaii Ironman is the thing everybody wants to talk about. You're golden.
Yeah. So that's been the theory, Joe, over the years. Just double down. So 51 renditions to that formula.
No kidding.
And some more to come.
So how do people feel? I guess as a consumer, I guess I'm kind of happy, right? He's got a new formula.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I say we, that's the royal we, I have done a terrible job of educating our customer base, like just how much effort goes into the continual updates, the audits we do, the science we get, the PhDs we get to review it, just to keep us on top of the game. But the name of the game is customer experience and moat. Those are the 2 things.
It's awesome. And so 10 years out, where are you going to be?
I suspect I'll probably be sitting here with you. You'll still be going like, who is this guy? What's he doing?
No. Well, you and I will be running a race together.
Yeah, well, if it's a short race, man. Unfortunately, in rugby, I took my hamstring off the bone the last game of rugby, got it reattached, but my running mechanics have really changed. And
what's your exercise? What could you do?
I can do very short things. Or short and intense, which is actually better suited to how I'm built anyway.
What specific exercise do you love?
I love hill sprints. Okay. And I love picking up things and throwing them around.
Got it.
And I miss contact sport, and I miss contact team sport in particular.
So why don't we'll grab like a 50 or 100 pound sandbag and run up the hill quick.
Run up the hill? I'll do intervals in 100 meters first or something.
No, and then we'll come back and we'll finish the podcast. Is that cool?
If you want to.
All right, let's do it.
We're going to be right back to this interview in a moment, but first we're going to hear from one of our sponsors. We're going to hear about one of our sponsors, Chomps.
Yeah, the beef jerky, right? The cleanest one on the market.
Not just beef, turkey, venison.
Oh, turkey, that's right, yeah. And I like a good beef jerky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or jerky.
Well, and what did they say? The cleanest jerky on the market, right? So what makes it clean?
So it's non-GMO product, no gluten, no dairy, no soy, loads of protein, no sugar added, no extra preservatives, nitrates, stuff like that. It's just, as you said, like the cleanest turkey on the market. It's the best you're going to find.
Yeah. This also coming as the best tagline. So the other one is pro-protein, anti-junk.
Oh, I love that.
Keeps it straightforward, doesn't it?
Yeah, and not only is it cleanest, it's best tasting.
It actually is.
I'll tell you what, we did. We had some yesterday, and I chomped down on them, and I liked them. Yeah. So I'm going to be buying those things up. And where can you go to get those?
You know what? Probably the best way is to go to chomps.com and use the code Spartan for 20% off.
20% off.
I'm going to recommend you get the jalapeno ones. Dynamite. 20% off.
Nice.
Spartan at chomps.com.
Awesome.
Good. Let's go back to the interview.
I'm annoyed you beat me on those hill sprints.
Man, it's brutal, but you got to accept reality.
Rugby is a serious sport. I mean, it's probably part of your whole fabric, right?
I love that sport so much for the camaraderie and the teamwork. You can have the world's best individuals on your team, but if you don't play well as a team,
doesn't work.
You know
what pisses me off about rugby? I didn't know much about it, and I moved to Singapore for a year with my family, and I got my boys into rugby because I wanted them to be as tough as you. And we went on some tours. We went to Hong Kong, right, to some rugby tournaments. The dads drank so much beer. I had never seen anything like this before. Literally, they'd have 2 beers open and a third one was getting like, and I just, you don't need that.
You don't need it. I didn't tend to do all the after-game action. I had a long-term girlfriend at the time, so I sort of would beg out. But I did travel the world holding a rugby ball. And rugby is an unusual sport in that when people have played it, you try to kill each other for sort of an hour and a half, and then you're mates. And I would travel with a ball, and people come up and go, "Hey, man, so you got a rugby ball?" I used to play rugby, and just fostered these amazing.
It's an amazing community.
Yeah,
global community.
So I literally just walked around the world holding a rugby ball, pass it to bus conductors, whatever. Man, it was a cool.
And you had a pretty easy life. Like you went right from successful thing to successful thing.
Easy. I was born with everything handed to me, but
nice.
but not quite.
Well, tell us that. Yeah, tell us what happened.
I think all of us as entrepreneurs have some origin story, and frequently it's a lot tougher than what people think. People see potentially the exterior signs of success and think, oh, it just kind of happened that way. It's not the case. By the time I had landed, I ended up borrowing over $1.5 million to get Athletic Greens off the ground. Wow. Much of that in R&D and much of it in the first product iterations. And at the time, my New Zealand and Australian business ventures had basically folded completely, largely due to me not foreseeing the global financial crisis, which puts me amongst many people. Yeah. And it was good in that it focused me on a future project about which
and
I was.
And that was like 2008-ish. You borrowed?
8 and 9. No, 7, 8. Everything was kind of hunky dory, and by 9, 10, everything was like really going downhill. So I ended up bankrupt. I lost my parents' life savings. Ended up losing their house. Wow. I had many investors to whom I was indebted that I promised would get their money back. So bankrupt. I was facing litigation. I had failed business partnerships. They're not particularly enjoyable. And I'd gone through the money I had sort of originally raised to launch Athletic Greens in the USA. I was in a pretty dark time in my life. And like a lot of people, I'm relatively cheerful. I think you're relatively cheerful. Sure. And most people maybe wouldn't notice, but my sister sat me down and said, "We want to talk to you."
Older, younger?
One older, one younger.
Okay.
Amazing people. And said, "We think you're depressed. You're not the bubbly, happy, friendly guy. And we know you're drinking a lot. We know there's things broken here. And we think you need help." So I went and spoke to a doctor who I knew well. She said, "Yeah, all the symptoms. I'll connect you with someone. Like, what drug are you thinking?" I said, "I'm thinking no drugs." But it did force me to really brutally face the mirror and realize I'm not happy, and I'm doing some things that are destructive for me. So digging out of that hole was a process, but it forced me to focus really on what deep down made me happy long term. And I realized I want to take this brand, this message, the culture that I wanted to build around a focus on self-improvement and happiness. And that's ultimately why for a long time we had this phrase, 100% focus on happiness, was because that's literally what I had to do.
I like that.
Every day, just to sort of try to get out of that hole. And I got a big list of what are the things that make me happy, and like dancing makes you happy, socializing in a group of dynamic people makes you happy, sunlight on the face, eyeballs, skin makes me happy, intense exercise makes me happy, heat changes, so like either going to a sauna and coming out, or going to something freezing cold and coming out. How often have you not felt?
Always felt
happy, right? Yeah. So I did all of those things.
Every day.
For 3 months, read every book I could find, dropped everything apart from sort of this focus on happiness, and in this list of things.
Plus, Athletic Greens makes you happy.
It does. Yeah, it does. Thank you for the plug. It did make me happy. But like most entrepreneurs, so I made a lot of mistakes at that time, Joe, and I was sitting there with this crazy list of things I had to do.
And this is 2010?
This is 2010 in Miami, feeling very sorry for myself. But as part of that sort of focus element, all I did is I only have to do one thing each day to advance the business, and it's a success. And that simple practice, the one thing, I mean, there's now some guys who got a book, I think.
I saw the book. I was going to say, I was wondering if you wrote it.
No, I did not.
I saw the book in an airport, and I didn't want to buy it, so I just started flipping through it right away, and I thought, gee, it does make some sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, inherently, if you look at the millions of things you have in front of you.
I got a million things.
Yeah, so as the boss, your job is really, what's the one thing, if we execute on it to nth degree, will make all the difference. But as a startup wearing 100 hats, it's what the one thing today that's going to even get me further forward. And did that. And one day led to another day, and had a lot of support from a lot of health and fitness entrepreneurs who tried the product and loved it. And they'd said, when you have your webpage set up, whatever, we'll email. I mean, we love this product. We'll email for you.
Nice.
And that actually ended up being the biggest difference.
That one thing.
Yeah, it took me about 9 months to finally get a page that would actually convert any traffic, because it was horrendous. It was just terrible. Sure. Like I said, I thought, how hard can it be?
It was pretty hard.
Really hard.
The number one thing, the challenge we have as Spartan is not putting on races in 41 countries. Because I have a construction background, you have a we're pretty proficient at that. The thing that's the biggest challenge is digital. It's a freaking nightmare.
Digital side. Well, to be fair, when I had the do-up business, I didn't do any of it. Because if you want a light bulb change, man, I'll pick up the table.
Yeah, right.
I'll hoist the dude.
Sure.
But I can actually change a light bulb. But anything beyond that is kind of beyond me.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so maybe I like the happiness list. That's a big one.
Yeah.
So that for a long time actually was the catchphrase. We've just changed this on the label, simply because most people weren't like, what is the happiness? Like, what is this product? So we've now rebranded, renamed, and everything else. But 9 years, man, that was.
I like that.
That'd be interesting.
So isn't good enough good enough?
No. Sometimes actually good enough is good enough, but sometimes good enough is really, really, really bad. So I think too many entrepreneurs, too many creators, designers, whatever, come up with something and think that's fine. And maybe it lasts a little bit, but ultimately it doesn't last the long term. And I think the failing for many entrepreneurs is we never come up with the so-called second good idea. And in the case of us, if someone's going to build a better product than I originally built, I wanted it to be me. My focus has been, I will keep beating my own product. And I can't.
You just iterate. You're just going to iterate to death.
And I can't claim that. A little company called Intel has done that. A little company called Gillette has done that, where they frequently make their own form of product utterly redundant. And in our case, it's sort of, if the science ends up coming to that point, we'll do it. But that iteration, that kind of Kaizen, just keep doing better, is part of something I just wanted. If I'm going to go to all this effort and blood, sweat, and tears to build this, I don't have to be the biggest company. I just want to make something that I'm so proud of. I know it's the best.
It's hard to do, right? Because it'd be easier and comfortable to just keep the product and the branding and everything the way it is.
Yes, but it would also be boring, because the growth part's where a lot of the fun is. And now I have someone infinitely better than I was as the CEO.
Nice.
A crazy Australian, which is hard for a New Zealand man to admit.
That must be tough.
It is brutal. But he's doing a phenomenal job. So my focus now is literally just product and the charity side of what we're trying to do. I mean, one of the things in business is don't let perfect stand in the way of possible. And I think too many people may be kicking off, take the opposite path, and they come to the table too nervous to push their product in. They're trying to make it better before they actually take it to market. So I took my first iteration to market. I wasn't embarrassed about it, but if you compared the taste, how it mixes, the ingredient profile, just everything about it compared to now, it's not actually that similar at all. But we've just kept iterating, but we did bring a prototype to market and then just kept making it better.
In the beginning, it's minimal viable product.
You got it.
Right? And then it's tweak forever, I guess.
Yes.
Except if you're Coca-Cola.
Correct. Although, if I was to do this again or was advise someone else to do it, I would get minimum viable product and then get your market message match right. So I over-engineered this product. The first advisors I spoke to had a guy taking a retail company to $300 million, a guy who'd sold an online brand to considerably more than that. They asked me about our cost structure, and they both said, it won't work. You don't have the margin. I was like, oh, because I had all the product in the warehouse and had already done the whole wrong way round in theory. But ultimately, that over-engineering and the no compromise got me folks like Tim Ferriss.
Sure.
Yeah, got me.
They were willing to recommend it.
Yeah, put their name behind it and say something. So sometimes what you think is going to be the worst thing is ultimately the best.
The best thing. So let's go back to happiness for a second. We'll wrap it up with happiness. So read through that list again, right? Sunlight.
So I had a list. I had dancing. So I ended up taking salsa dancing lessons 3 or 4 nights a week for a couple of months. Yeah. Got pretty good. Twinkle toes have gone. So I'm actually now, just this year, starting that again. I sunlight on the eyeballs and the face. So the habit of going out first thing in the morning and getting light on your eyes. It's not just the vitamin D element. It's literally the light. I'd do that. I would do intense exercise. So I had a reattached hamstring, remember, so I'd run out of money. I couldn't keep paying the physical therapist. So my exercise choices were a little bit limited from intensity. But I'd get a couple of bands and do some Tabata intervals, which I'm sure you're familiar with, every single morning. And I think so that worked. Heat transfer, so going really hot, then getting cold, or going really cold. And then social engagements with dynamic people.
You know what I found, where I find happiness, which I think ties into the heat and cold, the temperature changes, is taking things away. In other words, we all chase, like, I'll be happy if I have that car. I'll be happy when this company is this size. But I find that if I take, like, things away, and then, for example, I haven't slept in 2 days, let's say, and then you lay on a bed of rocks. These rocks are great, right?
Yeah.
Or if you haven't eaten in 2 days, and then you have like crusty peanut butter, man, this is great.
It's one of the things I love about your book was just move the framework, move the pose with which you look at things, and suddenly you can apply everything.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest poison to happiness, the biggest killer of it all, is the line, I will be happy when.
You'll win.
And it just destroys people.
I agree.
Because instead of focusing on what is going to make them happy in the journey, which is what matters.
Or I'm just happy.
Yeah.
Just start saying it.
Be happy.
I'm happy.
I'm happy to meet you.
I'm happy to meet you.
Cheers, Joe. Thank you.
Cheers. This was great.
So another great interview by Joe, who you may notice isn't here. Joe is out on the mountain somewhere. We are in Tahoe at the World Championships. He's got some pretty important stuff to do here. Nothing more important than these interviews, though, which are always fantastic. Colonel Nye, speaking of important things, retired Colonel Nye is over at a conference. I'm not going to talk what it is because it's probably top secret, but he's over in Spain right now. Speaking of Spain.
Speaking of, holy cow, my ears perked up.
Yeah, I just want to, one of the things that this guy said that I loved was that good enough sometimes is a problem. You know what I mean? That you get good enough, you get complacent, maybe you get bored. Where's that happening in your life?
It's a constant, never-ending. I think we were talking about constant improvement earlier, but it's a never-ending process of just. I first heard it with Kel Sanderson, who's a Penn State wrestling coach, say satisfied being unsatisfied. I feel like I'll never be complacent, and that's a problem. As much as it's a part of me in a good way, it's a part of me in a bad way because it creates resistance in other areas of your life. But I think. Trying to look at myself holistically and understand that that's just a part of the deal. And when you talk to people like Joe and high performers, you realize that, that's just part of the deal.
You know, when you say that about recognizing some of your own challenges and stuff too, one of the things Chris talked about was that it wasn't until he recognized his depression and he recognized where he was struggling, because we can put on that happy face for other people and actually start to believe it ourselves, which is important as far as keeping yourself performing. But you also have to take stock and look at where you might be struggling, because if you don't address that, you're not going to move forward.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but about 1.5 years ago, I found out I was bipolar and I suffered some massive depression. And so it never, I had never, I don't know what the hell.
No, but you never stopped and looked at it. You just tried to press on and be Matt Davis, awesome Matt Davis.
Most of the time, yeah. And so when I had no choice. Like I was in a place where I could no longer function like I normally could, and I hadn't stopped to look at it.
Yeah, sure. And with that, he talks about that he chose not to go the route of pharmaceuticals, which is not necessarily a bad route. Get the help you need, but that there's so many natural things we can do either instead of or in addition to. And the idea about breathing, the idea about getting out in sunlight, the idea about being around people who are going to pull you up is really important. Yeah, I love the dancing. Yeah, that he said, and Joe often mentions that his mom made him dance. People see Badass Joe. Badass Joe has a wonderful soft side too, including dancing with his mom in the kitchen. Donna Summers.
Really?
It's Donna Summer, but anyway.
Matt Davis, what would be on your happiness list?
Well, interestingly enough, I had read, so when I was going through my stuff, I read that book Super Better. Have you heard of that?
Haven't.
I want to take out my phone now and put it on
Charlie
my
reads
list.
a ton of books, so here's another one for you.
Super Better, Jane McGonigal, put it in the show notes. She cured she had this massive depression from a head injury, and she was a gamer. And so she learned that she taught herself how to get out of this by playing games. And every night, this is true, I played Angry Birds with my daughter for about an hour. And obviously it's great bonding with my daughter, but also whatever it is that goes on in that part of the brain, it absolutely helped me. And so I made it a part of my every night routine with her.
That's interesting. He talks about also this idea, this addiction that we have to, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I get that car. I'll be happy when I finish the beast. I'll be happy when whatever.
I lose 15 pounds.
Yeah, sure. And the idea is be happy now and don't make it contingent on something. I often say that when somebody says, I just wish, or if only, because what they've done is they've taken what isn't true. They've absolutely identified what isn't happening and said, when that happens, I'll be happy. So why start with that impossible premise?
Can I sing you guys a Beatles song? Okay, I know I'm slightly tone deaf, okay? When it goes, love runs in a circular motion, just like a little boat on the sea. Everything's a part of everything anyway. You can be as happy as you let yourself be.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Happiness is an elusive creature. And sometimes you need to remind yourselves of things that do make you happy.
I recently heard someone say, I forget, and I wish I could reference who it was, but he said, once you can learn to love digging a ditch, then you have it made.
Yeah.
We love ditches
but
here in
it's
Spartan.
Exactly right. And he said that. He said part of the importance about taking things away is that here we go. I do want to mention that Marion and Andrea often remind me that I talk like this. So anyway, but he talked about when you can take stuff away from your life, and Joe got really lit up with this too, that if you can take away that bed for a while and you can sleep on rocks, then you appreciate the bed more. When you can take away the comfortable things in your life, and how important that is sometimes to introduce a bit of suffering, because then you appreciate those things you took for granted.
Absolutely.
Can I mention that?
Oh, yeah, you may.
Can I mention how much I appreciate my hotel bed because there's not children in it?
Amen to that one, Matt.
Right? On this specific trip, and I wake up and I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing.
I just want to mention when your kids get to be 21 and 19, you're going to look back on the years pretty happily.
They're open enough with that stuff.
But what I can say is, so Jody and his wonderful girlfriend Amelia, right? I had a conversation with them last night, and they're talking about to be happier. Oftentimes, think about some things that you can take away before you start adding more things, right?
Sure.
Because we have so much additional baggage.
So I want to mention something too. We're talking a lot about the happiness thing, and we may run a little bit long here because I want to go back to his business as well. This guy's built an incredible business, Athletic Greens. I've drank it, you've drank it. I'm not turning this into a commercial, but what I'm trying to talk about is he talked about how many iterations it took to get there. He had this great idea, but he had to have a second great idea and a third and a fourth, and he had to be willing to rip it apart and not just sit complacent with the fact that he invented this drink, but make it better and better. And one of the things he talked about that I really loved as part of his daily routine was identifying that day, what's one thing I can do today to move my business forward, and not get totally bogged down in the big picture, but what's one thing I can do. And, he's built this great business. And so there are things that we have to do in that world. There's one thing I often look at my notes, and you may notice me looking away, but I love taking notes. And he said, don't let the perfect stand in the way of the possible. And I'm trying to remember the term that Joe used, which was you have to go out quick with that thing that's going to work, because you got to get into the market, but then you have to be willing to say that's just the start and build on that.
Ready, fire, aim is someone taught that to me not too long ago, but I love it. And there is also a dichotomy that exists between great and good enough and great, because you want to put out your best. But if you wait till your best, you can't get to your best without doing less than your best.
Yeah, and we all know people who they want to write. They want to be a great writer, but they've never published a single thing because it's got to be perfect before they do. Don't let the perfect stand in the way of the possible. Just get it out there.
All right, this might be shocking, but I want to make a natural, ecological analogy here.
This is great.
I know I haven't. Okay, so I think like whenever you're building a business or something, when a forest, right, it goes through a forest fire, and then the trees decompose again and the seeds come back and the forest goes back into succession. At first, it's all sun, right? So it's going to be all sun-loving plants. And then as the shrubs grow up, it becomes more shade-loving. And things go into succession. So it's the same thing with your business. As things are growing up, your ecosystem is changing and you have to adapt. It's the same place. It's the same thing, but you're adapting to things as it changes and as it grows. It's a natural pattern. Matt Davis, what do you have to say?
People ask me a lot about podcasting, and I say absolutely just start You don't need the perfect equipment or the perfect whatever. And of course, you will then go back and go, wow, that was like not so great. If I listen to a 6-year-old podcast, I can't even like listen because it's cringeworthy. But if I didn't start, I wouldn't be at episode 300.
Charlie said the exact same thing yesterday. He said, I just got a new mic. I'm so excited about it. And it's not the best mic in the world, but it's going to make me better. It's the thing I could do today.
And it's also simple. We were talking about simplicity. It's still very simple. And I gave a talk 2 weeks ago, and I came home and I was talking to Dredd, who's my partner, and he said, how was it? I said, I think it was good. I think it was really good. And he said, you know what? Almost it doesn't matter, because to get to where you're going to get to, you have to have given that talk now. So you can't get to that level of whatever, mastery, expertise, whatever, without the stuff along the way.
I think honestly, it's like you're building your soil, right? Like the more things you put out there, it's like the leaves that fall in the soil and everything that decays that makes it more rich and nutrient rich to be able to sprout and grow more good things. If you want things to sprout, you got to keep on putting the fodder in there and build your soil.
And here I'm going to end with a natural quote, because I never do. Sometimes you fertilize it, sometimes you burn it to the ground. But either way, you keep getting better.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Chomps.
Pro protein, anti-junk. Use the code Spartan at chomps.com to save 20%.
Thanks for listening to Spartan Up. If you like our show, spread the word. Then subscribe wherever you watch or listen so you don't miss an episode. We'll be back here every Tuesday with Joe and the team, sharing interviews with high achievers. Then stay on track with quick hits of motivation and advice. Wednesdays, Spartan Mind with Dr. Laura Pence. Thursdays, Spartan Way with Zach Evanesh. Sundays, Spartan Health with Dr. Nada Milosevic. And if you're looking for even more, we've got tons of articles at spartan.life.com. See you next week.